The barber's hands began to tremble the moment he recognized what he saw on his customer's neck. It wasn't just a simple mark, it was a symbol that only a few men had the right to carry, and now everything was about to change. Before we continue with this powerful story of silence, respect, and hidden legends, tell me in the comments which city you're watching from today, and if you believe stories like this deserve to be remembered. Hit that subscribe button and help us make sure they never fade away. The barber shop sat on the corner of Main and Oak, squeezed between a pharmacy and a small diner that served coffee too strong and pie too sweet. Inside, 3 leather chairs faced a mirror that had seen decades of conversations, confessions, and the quiet rituals of men who needed more than just a haircut. Marcus had owned the shop for 22 years. He knew every regular by name, their stories, their troubles, their victories. But there was one customer who remained a mystery. He came in every third Tuesday of the month, always at 2:30 p.m., when the lunch rush had died down and the afternoon light streamed through the dusty windows just right. He never made appointments, never called ahead. He would simply appear at the door, nod once to Marcus, and take his place in the worn leather chair closest to the back wall. His name was William, according to the cash payments he made, but Marcus had never heard him speak more than 3 words at a time. The usual, please. That was it. No small talk about the weather, no complaints about the traffic, no stories about grandchildren or retirement plans. William was perhaps 70, maybe older. His hair had gone completely silver, cut in a precise military style that never seemed to grow out completely. His clothes were simple but clean, pressed khakis, button-down shirts in muted colors, and boots that were polished but showed years of serious wear. What struck Marcus most was how the man carried himself. Despite his age, his posture was perfect. His eyes, pale blue and sharp, seemed to catalog everything in the room within seconds of entering, and his hands, weathered and scarred, rested on the chair arms with a stillness that spoke of discipline earned through decades of practice. The other customers barely noticed him. He had perfected the art of being invisible, of occupying space without demanding attention. But Marcus noticed everything. It was his gift and his curse as a barber, reading people through the reflection in the mirror, understanding their stories through the way they held their shoulders, the pace of their breathing, the things they didn't say. That Tuesday started like any other. The morning had been busy with 3 walk-ins and 2 regulars who needed to look sharp for important meetings. By the time William arrived, Marcus was grateful for the routine, the predictable rhythm of cutting hair that required no conversation. The usual, please, William said, settling into his chair. Marcus nodded, reaching for his tools. William's haircut was always the same, a precise trim, shorter on the sides, neat around the ears, professional but not severe. It was the kind of cut that suggested discipline without being military obvious. Though Marcus had always suspected there was more to William's background than met the eye, as Marcus worked, he found himself studying William's reflection more carefully than usual. Perhaps it was the way the afternoon light hit the chair, or maybe he was just paying closer attention. But he began to notice details that had escaped him before. There were small scars on William's hands, thin white lines that spoke of cuts from something sharper than kitchen knives. His wrists bore the faint marks of what might have been rope burns, old but permanent. And when he shifted slightly in the chair, Marcus caught a glimpse of what looked like a surgical scar disappearing beneath his collar. But it was when Marcus moved to trim the hair at the base of William's neck that everything changed. The man's collar had shifted slightly as he leaned forward, exposing a small patch of skin just below his hairline. And there, faded but unmistakable, was a tattoo that made Marcus's hands freeze in mid-motion. It wasn't large, perhaps 2 inches across, but Marcus knew exactly what he was looking at. A trident piercing through a skull, surrounded by wings and anchor. Below it, numbers that had been darkened with age but were still readable. ST-6, SEAL Team 6, the most elite special operations unit in the U.S. military, the ghost unit that didn't officially exist, whose members were recruited from the best of the best and whose missions were classified so deeply that most would never be acknowledged. Marcus had seen that tattoo only once before, on his brother-in-law who had served 2 tours in Afghanistan before a roadside bomb ended his career. But even Tommy had spoken of SEAL Team 6 in whispers, with a mixture of awe and fear reserved for legends. His hands began to tremble. The scissors felt suddenly heavy, foreign in his grip. He took a step back, trying to compose himself, but William had noticed the change in rhythm. "Everything all right back there?" William asked, his voice calm but alert. Marcus swallowed hard. "Yes, sir, just adjusting my grip." But as he resumed cutting, his mind was racing. This quiet man who paid in cash and never spoke about his past, who moved like a shadow and observed like a hawk, had been one of the most elite warriors in the world. The man who took on the missions no one else could handle, who operated in the darkest corners of the globe with no recognition, no glory, and often no way home. As Marcus worked around William's ears, he caught sight of more scars, a small round mark near his temple that could only have come from a bullet, a jagged line along his jawbone that spoke of shrapnel. This wasn't just any veteran, this was a man who had seen combat that most people couldn't imagine, who had done things that would never be recorded in history books. "You're being very careful today," William observed, his pale eyes meeting Marcus's in the mirror. "Just want to make sure I get it right, sir." Something in Marcus's tone must have changed, because William's gaze sharpened. He studied Marcus's reflection for a long moment, then asked quietly, "You recognize something, don't you?" Marcus's hand stilled. There was no point in lying, as those sharp eyes missed nothing. "Yes, sir, I do." William was quiet for several heartbeats. When he spoke again, his voice was softer, but it carried a weight that seemed to fill the small barber shop. "My brother-in-law served. He told me stories about the teams, about the men who did the impossible." "Most stories aren't true," William said simply. "Maybe not, but the important parts are." Another silence stretched between them. Marcus resumed cutting, but with even greater care now, as if the man in his chair were made of something more fragile than flesh and bone. "How long?" Marcus asked finally. 28 years. Started when I was 19. Marcus did the math. William would have served during some of the most intense periods of modern warfare: the Gulf War, Somalia, the early years of the War on Terror, the operations that shaped the modern world but were never discussed in the news. "Why here?" Marcus asked. "In a little barber shop in a nothing town?" William's smile was barely visible, but it was there. "Because here, I'm just another customer who wants a haircut. No questions, no expectations, no hero worship, just a man getting older who needs to keep his hair neat." "But you're not just another customer." "No," William agreed. "But you've never treated me any differently, until today." Marcus felt heat rise in his cheeks. "I'm sorry, sir, I didn't mean to." "You didn't do anything wrong, but now you know, and that changes things." As Marcus put the finishing touches on the haircut, he found himself moving with a reverence he'd never felt before. This wasn't just about cutting hair anymore, it was about honoring a man who had sacrificed more than most people could comprehend, who had carried the weight of missions that kept the world spinning on its axis. When he was finished, Marcus stepped back and removed the cape from William's shoulders. The older man stood slowly, studying his reflection in the mirror with the same careful attention he'd probably once used to scan hostile territories. "Perfect, as always," William said, reaching for his wallet. But Marcus shook his head. "No charge today, sir." William's eyes met his in the mirror. "That's not necessary." "Yes, it is." For a moment, they stood in silence. Then William pulled out a $20 bill and placed it on the counter. "For the service." "Not for what you think I did." Marcus understood the distinction. William wasn't looking for charity or special treatment. He was a customer who had received a service and was paying for it, same as always. But as William moved toward the door, Marcus found himself speaking. "Sir, thank you, for whatever you did over there, for whatever you can't talk about. Thank you. William paused with his hand on the door handle. When he turned back, his expression was softer than Marcus had ever seen it. I didn't do it for thanks, he said quietly. I did it because someone had to. And then he was gone, disappearing into the afternoon sunlight like he'd done dozens of times before. But this time, Marcus stood watching through the window long after William had vanished from sight. The next Tuesday, William returned at his usual time, but something had shifted between them. Not the easy dynamic of customer and barber, but something deeper, a recognition, a respect that didn't need words. Marcus never asked about the missions, the scars, or the stories that would never be told, and William never offered them. But in the quiet ritual of their monthly appointments, in the careful precision with which Marcus cut his hair and the steady stillness with which William received it, something important was honored. Because sometimes the greatest heroes are the ones who never wanted to be heroes at all. They're the quiet customers who pay in cash, who say please and thank you, who slip back into ordinary life and hope that their extraordinary past can rest in peace. But for those who know how to look, for those who recognize the marks that can't be hidden completely, these men stand as living reminders of what some people will sacrifice for the rest of us to sleep safely at night. William still comes in every third Tuesday. He still says the usual, please, and Marcus still cuts his hair with the same careful precision. But now, in the reflection of that old mirror, both men understand exactly what they're really doing. They're honoring a silence that speaks louder than any story ever could. So I ask you, have you ever encountered someone like William? Someone whose quiet presence carried the weight of untold stories? Someone who served in ways you'll never fully understand? Share their memory in the comments. Tell us how they lived, not what they did. Because sometimes the most powerful tributes are the simplest ones. Thank you for watching the human stories. If this story moved you, subscribe and help us keep these quiet voices alive. Because in a world that's forgotten how to honor silence, these stories matter more than ever. And next time you're getting a haircut, look a little closer at the person in the chair next to you. You might be sitting next to a legend who just wants to be treated like everyone else.